Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we will be listening to the 9th part of What If RWBY and Weiss Were Childhood Friends. If you enjoy, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing down below, and don't forget to hit that bell icon so you get notified when videos go live. Now, without further ado, let's get into the video. Chapter 17, Infiltration. 6:32 p.m. Any movement? RWBY asked, inside and out. Negative, Penny replies, eyes glued onto the screen in front of her. It's like the place is deserted, nothing to be picked up by the sensors. I'm sorry RWBY, but even I'm starting to have some doubts. I say we just bust through the door, head first, guns ablazing. Nora grins only to be shushed by one panicked looking John. Idiot. Not so loud, he hissed, you're gonna blow our cover. Nora just blows raspberries at him before proclaiming, dude. We're like a kilometer away. Yes, that's right, currently they were perched on top of a building that had eyes on docks, Penny hacking through all the nearby surveillance cameras that would give them some eyes that would give them an advantage of some kind. So far, there was nothing. Nothing, for the past 6 or so hours. Of course, she had her fair share of boring stakeouts, but after being out of the game for the past 2 months or so, she didn't realize how antsy one could be after coming back again. Maybe she wasn't as innocent as she kept telling herself to be. RWBY had always thought of herself as someone with a pacifist streak in her, unlike her sister who loved getting up close to bad guys and punching the bejesus out of them. She didn't like hurting people nor killing, but would easily choose to if she wasn't given an option. But right now, with everything happening, she was almost wishing to have a reason to shoot her guns and run wild. A desire to be put in danger and have that feeling of her senses heightening, veins pumping. Something to quell all the worries she was feeling as of the moment. Was this what a relapse felt like? Maybe it was time to accept that psych evaluation Uncle Crow kept telling her about, but she digressed. Another time maybe, but right now, she presses the button of the earpiece and, anything on your side, Yang? Nah, nothing, me and Ren haven't seen anything worth squat. Yang sighs, guess Glinda wasn't joking about this guy being a fucking ghost. Alright, regroup, come back to location and we need to commence Plan Alpha, RWBY replies, we're not getting anywhere if we just wait here. Finally. I was getting tired of seeing boring buildings and dark, murky waters. We're coming back, be there in 5. It didn't take long for the remaining pair to meet up with them. Alright, everyone, huddle up, RWBY says before kneeling down behind Penny. The orange-haired girl pulls up the screen and shows them a map of the docks and possible layouts of the warehouses from the inside. It's almost sundown and it's our best bet. The place has minimal lighting, so we stay in the shadows and aim for one of the warehouses nearest to the docks. Penny, if you will. The girl nods and shows them her laptop screen. Alright, so, this is the entire layout of the area and here's where the cameras are situated. She highlights the model on the screen before continuing. I don't have the exact current floor plans of the warehouses here, but it is fair to assume that based on the signs of weathering and overall design, this hasn't been changed since it was made, and I managed to get a copy of the original building plans. Everything inside, however, is going to be as much a surprise as it's going to be for you and me. I can't find any cameras inside or any computer systems that I could connect to, sadly. Our main point of entry is through the roof. There seems to be a hatch on the center of every warehouse and we should have no problems picking through the locks. RWBY nods. Like I said, John, Ren and I will be heading inside. Penny, I'll patch you through soon as I find a system you can connect to. Nora, Yang, you two are back up. We'll investigate, and at the first sign of trouble, you come in and bail us out if you deem that the handler is safe, but if not, grab Penny and leave. Regroup. Back at base. The other 5 members of the team nod collectively as she stands up and straightens her coat. Our goal is Torchwick, everyone else is irrelevant, engage only when necessary. We get the information and put a stop to whatever fucked up thing they're planning. Agents, are you ready? The 5 simultaneously saluted and RWBY could only nod grimly. Let the manhunt begin. 8:02 p.m. Blake Belladonna was a lot of things, and sadly, a spontaneous thrill seeker has never been one of them. As they drove to their destination using an Uber of all things, to avoid Weiss' car getting and possibly being wrecked and traced by an evil bastard who supplies weapons if she remembered correctly, she felt jitters erupting inside of her. Her usual calm, cool demeanor was overrun by nerves. Beside her, Weiss looked somewhat impassive, that's if Blake didn't know her. The way she held her breath, How tense her shoulders were and how there's a permanent crease on her brows showed her best friend was just as, if not more nervous than her. So, I gotta ask, why are you gals dressed in those fancy leather jackets and going to the docks of all places? The driver, a guy named Jeremy, who was probably just a few years older than them from the looks of it, asked. Oh, we're just going to enjoy the nice, cool, sea breeze, Weiss answers, tone somewhat dismissive. Really gotta say, you city gals are a weird bunch, we're here by the way. Enjoy your sea breeze ladies, he grins as they both got down. If you guys need another ride, hit me up. I like getting customers not from the app, that way I get the fee as a whole, you know. We'll keep it in mind, thank you sir, Blake answers and soon the car leaves. There was a certain air of animosity practically oozing around the area. There's still time to back out from doing something really stupid, Weiss, just so you know it's an option, Blake gulps, staring at the multiple warehouses that lay just across the road. No, I'm tired of not being there for them, Blake, and I also feel horrible of the way I accused them like that. And there's a number of different ways for us to apologize, things that don't involve getting ourselves caught up in this dangerous business. Blake says like a desperate plea. Too late, we're already here, we just keep our wits about and get whatever information you think might help them, get out, head for the sisters and apologize profusely, easy enough, right? Weiss shrugs, hiding behind a wall, looking around the place before moving forward. Pretty soon, she was nearly out of Blake's line of sight and she could only hold back a sigh and steel her nerves to follow the white-haired girl to make sure she didn't get maimed or worse. It was dark in the area, with only a number of light posts around. Really, their all-black ensemble worked so well with blending in with the shadows. Weiss placed a balaclava on her head that covered the entirety with her hair tied in a bun. The only you could see on the girl's face was the area around her eyes. Quietly, the pair walked around inspecting everything, and here is some stuff they both agree was weird. The place was eerily quiet, no people in sight, and the only sounds you would hear was this muffled sound of whirring coming from beneath. Which was already giving them a lot of questions. The only thing under the pavement they were standing on was the ocean. The cold, dark, murky ocean. There were also no signs of Yang and their gang of agents, so even Blake herself was beginning to doubt if they even got the right place. Then again, they were trained operatives. If they would be easily spotted by a pair of civilians, then they wouldn't be good at their jobs now, were they? So for the next few or so minutes, all they did was look around the area, only to be met with the same rusty walls and the almost grating sound of muffled whirring. Okay, I really gotta ask, where the actual fuck is that sound coming from? Blake hisses, it's been bothering me since we got here. So, you hear it too? Weiss raises a brow and Blake just gave the girl a deadpan expression. I thought it was just a buzz in the back of my head. Really, Schnee? Really? Well, it's not like you said anything earlier. Alright, never mind, let's just summarize our findings. Blake takes a deep breath and focuses on their surroundings. There's nothing here. Nothing but that curiously horrid sound of whirs coming from beneath the ocean, that is. Weiss replies, now what? Look, dude, I don't know, it's not like I do this on a daily basis. I don't make it a point to investigate secret organizations hell-bent on making the world bow down to them. But just as Weiss was about to say something, they both stiffened as the loud sounds of whirring came from the wharf. Blake cusses and grabs Weiss' arm as they hid behind a stack of rotting, wooden containers, eyes carefully trained on the area. Their eyes widened as the ship pops out from the bottom of the ocean, a giant submarine of some kind. A long, mechanical platform comes out from the side that connected to the wharf before the main doorway opened. It wasn't long before a dozen or so people came out of the passageway. Wearing all black, militaristic-looking outfits. Faces covered with masks with only their eyes showing. The most disturbing part was, it was green. A bright neon green that seemed to glow, pupils, scleras and all, a glowing neon green. Something's definitely wrong with those guys, Blake mumbles, eyes never leaving the group. Oh, I don't know, I think neon eyes seem like a fashionable thing. Of course there's something wrong with them, the white-haired girl whispers. You think RWBY and the others know about this? But she didn't get the chance to answer the question as a man wearing a white and fedora comes out of the same passageway, and all dozen, Blake will proceed to call them corrupted, people lined up neatly in perfect synchronization. She could see her friend shaking as soon as he arrived. Weiss, what's wrong? She asks, and her friend's blue eyes practically become steel. That's him, the man that bumped into RWBY, the guy they called Torchwick. It was too dark to make out his expression, but by the way he moved, he commanded some respect. There was something about him that made you feel unsettled, his very aura oozed devious maliciousness. But as he spoke, Blake felt her spine get a chill. "All right, puppets, prepare to bring in the weapons, this is a big shipment, carefully with the merchandise, and, if you find unnecessary vermin, bring it to me, I want a few more additional toys, understand?" They saw the line of corrupted soldiers give simultaneous confirmation before walking in a creepy harmony. The man walks back inside the submarine but leaves the platform as is. "Are you thinking what I'm thinking?" Weiss asks, and Blake has to hold back a groan from coming out. "I demand an unlimited supply of sashimi after this, I swear, Shni, all you can eat whenever I ask for it. And I gladly give you that, now come one, before those creepy doll people come back." It was when they got in, Weiss began to realize just how far bravado would take her. As soon as they landed on the metal railing that led deeper into the submarine, she was slowly starting to accept that maybe this wasn't the smartest plan she'd ever come up with. She gulps and instinctively reaches out to grab Blake's hand in support. The black-haired girl held her hand tightly to give reassurance, and they continued walking as carefully and silently as they could. It was cold inside, dim, the only lights that lit the place up were the tiny beams from the sides of the floor, and much too quiet for her liking. They kept walking and walking, until they reached the end of the seemingly long hallway. Sharing a look with Blake, they nodded and opened it as quietly as they could. As soon as the door opened, she found out one thing: bravado could only carry her to the door before she wanted to run away from the sheer intensity of how much she was way in over her head. Out of her fucking depth. It wasn't just a submarine. Tall ceilings, white walls, and various machinery stacking big crates full of most likely weapons. It wasn't a sub. It was a warship. An underwater warship ready to transport hundreds and thousands of weapons, enough to launch a war and wreak havoc across the world. "Holy fuck," Blake mumbles, eyes unwilling to leave the scene in front of them. She feels the black-haired girl's hand shake as they try to grasp what they were staring at. Was it Blake who was shaking? Or was it her? At this point she didn't know. All she knew was that they needed to go back and find Ruby and Yang, warn them of what was inside, and hope they'd be able to stop whatever the fuck evil plans these guys were planning. "Well, I guess now we know what the whirring sound was," she gulps as the pair share a look. "We have to go back to tell them, we have to go now," Blake says with urgency, but they couldn't leave quick enough. Multiple sets of feet could be heard stomping in and out of the place, and they could only hide behind this small, supply closet-looking space. What is it with them and finding places to hide at the last moment? All of a sudden, the warship's PA system blared, and it was that guy's voice again. "Man, we don't have all evening. Brass wants this delivered by tomorrow. Chop chop, you useless stooges. Get a damn move on." Countless stomps of feet hurrying up, and the sounds of crates being hauled faster got louder and louder. No sounds of complaints coming from the corrupted people, just quiet grunt and the shuffling from their movements. "Fuck, we need to get out of here, Weiss, and we need to hurry. I don't want to find out where they're going to be taking this war-starting batch of weaponry," the usually cool and calm girl says with panic. I know, but how are we supposed to leave when they're surrounding the whole place?" she answers back. "I told you this was a bad idea. But you didn't listen. Now things only escalated for the worse when the ship started rocking and creaking." Weiss and Blake held each other as they felt the ship sink further and further into the depths, before it started moving forward in one direction, and they knew they were all fucked. "Shit." Blake cussed loudly, grabbing her phone from her pocket, quickly opening and dialing Yang's number, but it was no use, the call couldn't connect. Wherever they were far too deep for the signal to reach them. They were fucked, weren't they? 7:45 p.m. As soon as the sun had begun its descent, she was back in the zone. Her thoughts were silent, as the only thing her brain focused on was the mission. She was deep in her mind, where the only thing that mattered was the objective, and despite how she preached yesterday's rant, a part of her was here now, was craving the blood-pumping action and thrill of the hunt. The pressure and tension she had built the past few days built itself up. Now she wanted to be wild and violent. Her head was empty, only one goal. All of a sudden, it was like she was 9 again, staring down 6 guys, pistol raised up, with only a single thought of survival in her head. "Find anything," her sister's voice echoed just as she jumped on top of the roof with a sling of her wrist grappling hooks. "No, we haven't found anything suspicious on the outside anyway, we're about to head in, be back, get ready for anything. Copy that, be careful. You too, be safe. Then the message was cut off. RWBY takes a deep breath and raises her right hand to grab her two companions' attention. Ren gives her a decisive nod whilst John looks more unsure but shares the sentiments. She points to the hatch at the top of the warehouse and the three of them converge into it. When they got there though, she couldn't help but raise a brow. Unlike the rest of the place, which was old, run-down, and rusty, the hatch itself looked brand new, clean, and very high-tech. I thought it was just a simple lock. John asks in confusion, what the heck? She grabs the glasses in her pocket and places it on top of her nose. Penny, connect through my lenses. On it, she hears the orange-haired girl reply from the side of her earpiece, well, this is definitely new, I couldn't find anything about this, hold on, let me examine it. Well, at least now we're sure something shady's definitely happening here, Ren nods. RWBY herself eyed the contraption before them. Nothing quite she hasn't seen before, but also not something she could break into with just a pair of spy glasses, grappling hooks and a gun on her person. She was starting to think that maybe she was woefully under-equipped for this mission, but then again, she's gone through worse with less so. Alright, I might be able to open it, can you find a small panel there, RWBY? There should be one on the bottom right part of the hatch, open and plug the connector from your glasses. Doing as she was told, Penny quickly got to work. Before they knew it, the hatch was hissing cold air and soon, they dropped down the passageway as gently and as quietly as they could. The first thing RWBY noticed around the place was the cold. It was chilling inside, akin to being placed inside a freezer, and it was dark as hell. She stayed still for a good moment, letting her eyes adjust to the dark before turning the night vision on. Seems like the boys had a similar assessment. For a good moment all she could hear was the rustling of their movement, and then, when all three of their vision cleared, the sight was enough to make her puke. The first sight she saw was just as chilling as the air around the place. There were at least 10 people inside giant vats of some sort of liquid, floating lifelessly as a sort of mask connected to a tube was attached to half their face. She hears John audibly gasp and Ren gulping just from a few feet away from her. Are you seeing this? Penny, she shakily asked. What the? I thought this guy was shipping weapons, she hears Yang exclaim from the background. Followed up by one Nora who asked, are they even alive? I got a bad feeling about this, Rubes, fall back, we need to regroup, this wasn't part of the mission. Yang says with urgency. Guys, is it just me, or do these people look familiar? John asks shakily, but their attention was quickly taken by the sound of machinery. What was that? Penny asks from the earpiece, but the only thing RWBY could hear was the sound of her heart beating much too loudly. She hears the thudding of her veins, and as her calm breaths turns short and silent, she waves her hand, letting the boys follow her lead. The door that led to the outer room wasn't anything special, it wasn't locked. Just a simple door that opened with the touch of a hand. They never expected anyone to get in here, other than that, they didn't expect anyone to get out. Grabbing her pistol from her holster, she flips the safety off, John and Ren, following suit. John grabs his sword's pommel, before letting it erupt into its usual state, a plasma blade. Ren on the other hand, pulled out his dual Uzi daggers, and the three of them shared a look of understanding. Rubes. Get out of there. I don't like how this is going. RWBY, she hears Yang say, but it was too late. Her vision suddenly got dimmer by the second. She felt so lightheaded. The ringing in her ears was getting louder and louder, and didn't even notice when John and Ren had fallen down from behind her. A pungent smelling odor clung to the air, and it wasn't long before her legs finally gave in. RWBY's grip on her pistol loosened, and with a clack it fell on the floor, followed by a thud as she landed on the cold marble tiles. RWBY didn't know how long she was out. It was dark, cold, and for some reason, her body was aching in several different parts. Never mind the fact that her head felt like it was just hit by a blunt object. She could briefly hear the sounds of metal vibrating, water and propellers. Drugged and beaten, was her fleeting thought before she lost consciousness again, but before she did, she saw a brief glimpse of a sinister smile and a fedora. As soon as the call got cut off, Yang was running. It would take roughly 5 minutes to get to where RWBY was, and by the time, it might already be too late. Her thoughts were too loud, she didn't hear Nora and Penny calling after her. Fuck, she cussed, she can't think like that. The moment she gave in, RWBY and the boys would be fucked. So Yang ran, as fast as she could, jumping through obstacles or outright just punching her way through until she got to the warehouses. She grit her teeth and jumped on the rusty wall and gripped her gauntlet-covered fingers on it before scaling the damn thing with just her pure upper body strength. Pulling herself up the ledge, she got to the roof and quickly made her way through the same hatch her sister had jumped in. Her breathing was becoming ragged, panic and fear coursing through her. She grabbed the handle and pulled it apart before jumping down without any caution, safely landing with a roll. The room wasn't the same as what Ruby had shown moments earlier. The place was well lit, no sign of people inside mystery vats, and boy, the place was a fucking freezer. Her eyes scoured the room until it landed on a familiar-looking sword pommel that fell just on the side. She grabbed it and placed it in her pocket before charging her gauntlets and quite literally, punching through the door where their communication was cut off. Dust and debris clouded her vision. When it cleared up, her eyes widened on dozens upon dozens of wooden containers. But no Ruby or the boys in sight. Quickly walking to the nearest container, she ripped the cover open and threw it away. Weapons. Inside were weapons, guns, bombs. Judging by the amount of it just within this, it was enough to supply an army to start a war. I found the shipment, Yang says to her mic, and almost immediately, Penny answers. What about Ruby and the boys? Their orange-haired friend asked with panic riddling her tone. Nora's on her way. But she was cut off as she saw something in the corner of her eyes. Immediately dodging on instinct, she landed on her feet and was face to face with three people all wearing black fatigues, everything covered but their eyes. Their unsettling, everything neon green, glowing eyes. What the actual? But Yang wasn't given a chance to finish as the trio made a sprint for her, brandishing their weapons. One was holding a katana, the other had daggers, and one with dual pistols. She raises her metal-covered arms and immediately hears a clang as a bullet hits it. She winced slightly from the impact. Man, 2 months was far too long for her to be out of commission. There was no thrill nor excitement as of the moment. All she felt was worry and fear, for her sister and this unknown situation they were currently thrusted in. Yang, however, wasn't given any more time to think as the other two were a few feet away from her. She dodged to the side as a sharp katana came slicing down at her, then jumped backwards, narrowly avoiding daggers incoming from the other side. They were too close and she couldn't gain the momentum to retaliate. So she ran, giving herself some distance, but it didn't take long for the third person to aim at her and shoot at her continuously. She was at a disadvantage. She'd have to keep dodging up close or running around and narrowly avoiding bullets. Well, until her reinforcement arrived. Behold! My thunder thighs! She hears Nora scream and instantly a loud bang echoed throughout the warehouse. She couldn't exactly focus on the peach-haired girl, but she saw the person with the guns flying as they were hit with such an attack that let them land on the wall, leaving a permanent outline of their body on it. The peach-haired girl makes a beeline for Yang's location and their eyes lock together. Yang jumps back as fast and as far as she could and Nora lands in front of her, grenade launcher, hammer thing, cackling with electricity. The marbled tiles of the floor cracked and broken, letting its scrap fly around everywhere. That was all Yang needed. Nora ducks and she vaults over the girl, right fist fully charged and letting it sail towards one of the enemy's stomach. She hears a crack and the person was thrown back, landing on one of the wooden containers. The strength of her punch and the collision made the wood break into splinters and the person, who was more likely concussed with an accompanied several broken ribs, passed out in exhaustion and pain. The last person, who was wielding the katana, still didn't get a damn hint, continued to go after them, but Yang was already overloaded with various emotions. Mostly negative. With one swift punch, the attack lands on the person's face, inevitably breaking their nose and fully incapacitating them. Then silence, as she let everything that happened sink in. It didn't take long for something else to grab their attention though. Guys! Come to the docks, quickly! Penny's voice echoed in their earpieces and Yang's body was like in autopilot. Soon Nora and her were sprinting again. She sees the peach-haired girl raise her giant, lightning hammer slam through the front door and they are once again on the outside world. They see Penny by the wharf, holding all her equipment limply, mouth agape in surprise and disbelief. Then soon, she was staring at the scene aghast too. Yang fell on her knees as a giant submarine was beginning to sink into the depths, leaving them all behind. The enemy had just taken half their team. Uncle Crow and Glinda were missing in action. John and Ren were taken and Ruby was gone, kidnapped, and was being delivered to who knows where. Yang had no idea how to salvage this, but one thing was for sure, they needed to regroup. Chapter 18, A Deep Dive. Weiss woke up with a jolt as the metal beneath her groaned and creaked. Eyes bleary, she rubbed it and let it focus on her surroundings. It took a while for her thoughts to catch up to her. In this small and dark space, she remembered where she really was. She felt something warm beside her and immediately reached out for the person. "Blake," she called out quietly, gently shaking her friend, "wake up." The black-haired girl just groaned in protest, so she had to do it again, but this time, more forcefully, "Blake, wake up." The girl practically jumps up and Weiss had to push her downwards to keep her from making too much of a ruckus. A gentle thud and her friend was back down on the cold metal floor. "What the actual fuck, Weiss," Blake says grumpily and honestly, she knew she deserved it as of the moment. After all, it was her fault they were here in the first place. "I'm sorry I woke you up, but we're still here," she mumbles worriedly, looking around the dark closet, not knowing what to do. "How long were we out?" Blake replies, before pulling out her phone. The sudden brightness from when Blake opened it had her wincing, but when her eyes adjusted, the clock showed 5:32 a.m. "We were passed out for 6 to 7 hours or so, and there's still no bars on the signal," Blake sighs. "I wonder where they're going with us in tow." "Are you mad at me?" she couldn't help but ask. Blake glared at her for a moment before breaking out in a small grin and snorting. "Oh man, you should have seen your face, you were so scared," Blake chuckles. "Jerk, you didn't have to be so. Please, you deserved it, we're in this position cause you're nosy." Blake rolls her eyes and gives Weiss a small smack in the back of her head. "But I'm past scared, to be honest. I love you too much to get mad at your righteous antics. Now I'm just in the mood to be cynical and do my best to make sure we survive. If we manage to make it past their defenses without them knowing, then I know we can also get ourselves out of this without any confrontation, safely." "You're surprisingly optimistic for someone locked inside a supplies closet currently submerged in the ocean, inside a giant warship submarine," Weiss says with a brow raised in inquiry. "Yes, well, if I panic, you'll panic, and if we're both panicking then we're dutifully fucked, but I hold my preposition over your head that you owe sushi, the prime good shit, fatty tuna, unagi, crab, lobster. Ugh, you listing down food is making me hungry. Toro, otoro, salmon, maguro," Blake continues chanting in a deadpan manner, "shutara, shimsaba, sawara, aji, iwashi, sanma, kampachi, buri, katsuo, ingawa. What is this? Payback? Blake. Stop chanting. Kohata, tau, octopus, giso, squid, hotate, unagi. You already said unagi. Well, I want unagi twice." Blake huffs, pouting her lips, and begins listing down the different types of sushi with such intensity, boring her eyes on Weiss with almost a manic glaze. "Uni, anago, kazuniko, hokage-i, ebi, wajio. That's not even fish." Weiss groaned, covering her face, and was forced to listen to the black-haired girl's wants. Wherever they were headed, she really hoped they'd be landing soon. Yang hasn't slept a wink since RWBY and the others were taken last night. The three of them just around the room, pacing. Well, her and Nora anyway. Penny was doing all she could to locate the trio. 3 or was it 4 hours later, no luck. Yang had her head buried on the palm of her hands as she did all she could to not break down and cry. Things like these, kidnappings, especially for agents, they never end well. They seldom end with the kidnapped party tucked away safely in a secret room. She'd seen too many things to know that the chances are, they'd be tortured and killed slowly as the enemy tries to extract information from them in the most painful way possible. "Fuck, I'm worthless," Yang mumbles, holding back tears. "I should have gone in, god damn it. I should have been the one taken, it would have been better then." Then she felt something solid hit the side of her head, making her flinch. With a small thud, she sees a red apple on the floor and she turns to the direction where the fruit had come from. Nora was leaning on the doorway, eyes just as glum as she forcefully bit an apple. "Panicking won't do us any good," the peached-haired girl says, no hint of the typical chaotic jokester anywhere. Guess with Ren not being here to be the serious one in the relationship, Nora loses all the brightness of who she is as a person with a snap. "We have to stay calm and figure out how to find them and bring them back safe." But what if she started but immediately got cut off by the girl? No, they're alive, I know it. The moment we stop believing otherwise, we're all fucked. Another bite on her apple and Nora begins to turn away. Now, Are you gonna stay here and wallow, or are we gonna find something that can help Penny locate them? Let it be known that if you choose the former, I will hit you. She bit her lips, looking away for a moment before clenching her fist. Lilac eyes filled with determination. If Nora and Penny haven't lost hope, then she'd be damned horrible to give up now. Picking up the red fruit, she walked towards Nora, and the peach-haired girl just gave her a grin. Let's go, Yang nods, and thanks for the pep talk, I needed that. I know. I'm not used to not having Ren here with me too, but I know him well enough that he won't go down without a fight, and it'd be insulting if I gave up on him that quickly. Right, now let's help Penny find this fucking sub. Nora's grin grew feral as she clenched on half the apple on her hand, making it explode to mush. Once we find them, I'll make sure to slam them to tiny, bloody bits, a payback for taking my Ren. She was really glad Nora was on their team. I'll go ahead and go to Penny. Go clean up the apple's blood on your hand. Got it, Commander. With a quick swish of the door, she was back again in their secret room. The first thing Yang noticed was the orange-haired girl's head looking so shaggy. Quite unlike the usually kept, wavy locks. When the girl turned around to face her, the frenzied look in her eyes was there as she acknowledged Yang, but her fingers kept typing and clicking at an insane rate. Oh Yang, she smiled and went back to looking at her screen. Penny, status. I've been tapping into satellites to check if there's anything underwater, and I found some minor things, a couple of sunken ships, lost treasures, but there's this oddity near the southern Atlantic Ocean. Penny pauses, her thumb and index finger cradling her chin. It's weird, like a giant building situated under the ocean, but it's hidden, covered by some sort of cloaking device, just shows up like it's part of underwater terrain, just that the shape of it is kind of off, it's man-made. Yang pondered for a good minute before responding. Based on Vale's location and where the suspicious submarine was last night, do you think their trajectory would be the South Atlantic? If I'm being honest, I'm not sure. Penny shakes her head, but I do know that even if it's not their final stop, they're bound to pass by this suspicious-looking monument. We need something more conclusive than a hunch though. A third voice enters the conversation, Nora, looking more energized than when she interrupted Yang mid-breakdown. Is there any way at all for us to exactly locate them? You'd think with how paranoid Crow is about leaving you two alone, he'd chipped you by now. Yang stared at the peach-haired girl aghast. That actually sounded like something their uncle would do. Then, something popped up in the back of her head, a memory so painful she forced herself to forget it. Penny, can you scan my mouth? The orange-haired girl looked just as confused and surprised, but she did as told. Pulling out a device that looked like a thick phone, she pointed it at Yang's head and gasped as puts it down. You guys have molar trackers? Penny looked at her absolutely disturbed. Was it? Nora asks, looking a little confused at their friend's reaction. Yes we do, Yang replies with a slow nod as she lets Penny process it. Nora, molar trackers are locating chips, installed in the back row of your teeth. They were so painful to install, drilling the back of your mouth just to fully install it. Some people have even died through heart attacks because the pain was too much and their hearts just gave out. Similarly, the peached-haired girl just gave her a look of horror, and Yang nods solemnly. I honestly forgot about the whole ordeal until you brought it up. Me and Rubes got taken once on a mission. I was maybe 12. Ruby was 10. We were only a year in working as agents when the enemy managed to get a drop on us. We lost the tracking bracelet, and when the whole thing was over and we managed to finish it with success, Uncle Crow vowed to never lose us again. And he used one of the most foolproof ways to ensure it. You can't take it out easily, you can't lose it. Penny nods in agreement. Still, ouch. It wasn't bad. I don't think Ruby even knows she has a chip in her mouth. She was passed the fuck out, drugged as hell, and when we woke up, it was all better. That was 2 weeks of being in a pseudo-coma. Yang shook her head. I, on the other hand, woke up in the middle of it, screaming in pain, and they had to double, triple the dosage of anesthetics. She shudders. I wanted to forget that painful memory, and I did. But now it's back and stronger than ever, so thanks for that. Okay, let's leave Yang to her trauma for a bit. Nora grins. Pen, can you find where Ruby is? Hold up, she pulls out a Find My Tracker app on her screen. Now all I need to do is scan Yang's mouth. There should be a code directly on the tooth, and if I'm right, you and Ruby would have the same versions. Quickly getting her work done, she pulls out a pen and practically shoves it inside Yang's mouth. A quick flash of light and it's over with. The orange-haired girl was already typing more things on her laptop. This would have been easier if we had the actual codes, but I assume Crow would be keeping those somewhere safe, a place where no one would ever find it, so this'll have to do, take slightly longer, but then she pressed the enter key, highly effective. 3 dots showed up on the screen. One was in Vale, so she knew that dot was her, but the other two were in the middle of the ocean. One was blinking, moving closer and closer to the other dot, and one was stationary, right where Penny had told her about the underwater building. Looks like RWBY wasn't the only one in trouble, and they'll have to make this mission a 2-for-1. Agent Polandina, Agent Valkyrie, suit up, Operation Atlantis is a go. She was listening to Blake's food ramblings for the past hour and a half or so when the submarine war machine started creaking loudly. Grabbing the black-haired girl's hand, they held each other until the turbulent movement ceased and silence erupted once more. Gears turning and machinery whirring, and the ship halted its movement. "We're here," Blake mumbles, and Weiss could only nod, taking a deep breath. Dozens of feet passed by the outside in terrifying synchronization, and they knew it was those weird people with the glowing, green eyes. "Once it's quiet, we leave. If we can get something a little closer to their uniform, we'd be golden." "Where the heck are we gonna find fatigues here?" Weiss hisses, and Blake opens up her phone's flashlight. "Dude, it's a supply closet," Blake smirks, standing up and pulling out a curious pair of thick, black pants, "so let's get supplied." As soon as the army of stomping feet had disappeared and they could no longer hear feet, they got to work. Quickly changing out of their current outfits and into the black fatigues those controlled freaks wore. "What are we gonna do about our head and eyes?" Blake asks, and Weiss smiles mischievously as they see a row of tactical helmets. "Go for the whole look, huh?" Blake smirks, reaching for 2 headgears and placing it securely on their heads. When it attached though, the lenses booted up, looking more and more like a computer and a logo that said "What's tech?" "This is so tacky," Weiss mumbles, but when she saw the lenses fully booted up, there was a fully laid out map of what she assumed to be the entire underwater base. She couldn't help but smile beneath the helmet. Tacky, but useful. "No kidding, lucky us," Blake says. "Now, to check what this place is really about." Together, they slowly opened the door of the closet and were met with a familiar hallway and walked their way out of the same path they walked into. The moment they were outside, she couldn't help but feel the creeps. The first place you'd see was the docking area, covered end to end with the same crates inside the warehouses back in Vale. Weiss couldn't help but gulp. They were really here. Inside the enemy base. She turned to see Blake carefully inspecting the ceilings and floors. "What are you doing?" "Cameras, we're fucked if someone manages to see 2 seemingly lost, not at all synchronous people. We gotta be more careful from here on out." "Has anyone told you that you're eerily good at this?" Weiss says worriedly, and Blake just turns towards her. She could already see the cocked brow hidden beneath the helmet. "Detective and spies novels are my second go-to after raunchy romances." Blake clicks her tongue and faces forward. "Just follow my lead, you brat." Weiss couldn't hold back a snicker coming out. "Whatever you say, Blake Bondage." Weiss. It was dark and cold. She didn't remember just how she got here at this point, but she was already so tired. So tired. Of living this life of lies. Of being here. She was so sick of everything. Is she receiving the serum well? She hears a voice not far from where she was laying. A man, probably in his mid-40s or so. "Yes, I have to admit, I thought the bastard would fuck up, but he ended up giving us the prodigy after all," another one said, also a man but much withered. "The girl, for an amazing sum of money," the first man clicked his tongue, "wasteful, all we did was let him go. You do realize that bastard, is nothing but a backstabbing worm? He'll sell us off if he finds a bigger bidder." "You mean if he finds a bigger buyer, his work is done and so is his services. Frankly, I'm just glad not to see that eyesore anymore." "You mean you're happy he brought you toys, the complete set?" the first man asked, somewhat miffed. "Not complete yet, I'm waiting for the final piece, the eldest child, and soon, all 3 of them will be here, serving and doing my every beck and call," the elderly, seemingly psychotic man cackled. "She's not going to be pleased. She wanted first dibs on the kids and Agent Branwen, and I see that the third of her special forces puppets is also here despite orders saying otherwise. Let Miss Fall know that I intend to give her a chance at them once I'm done with my experimentation. I'll give them to her brand new and wholly improved." RWBY could almost see the twisted grin forming on the elderly man's face. "Now, move along, Watts," Don't you have some soldiers to station and weapons to deliver, you little errand boy? I hope you get what's coming to you, Merlot, Watts replied, and she could only hear the fading footsteps. Now, my dear, just you and me, the man laughed cynically, and she couldn't even fight it. She felt a pair of hands placed on her temple, and suddenly the brightness intensified as a piece of cloth was removed from her eyes. It took all her focus just to keep herself from passing out. Ah, good, you're awake. Then she was face to face with a thin old man wearing a lab coat, small, circular glasses with red lenses. His face withered and wrinkled, but she was all too familiar with the look of sadistic glee etched in his face as of the moment. She'd seen it so many times from dozens of different people over the years. But instead of wanting to fight back, she was already feeling more resigned than she'd ever been. I'd like to introduce myself. I am Dr. Merlot, and you must be wondering what's going to happen to you, or rather what's already happening. He smiles cordially, but every pore in his very being was leaking malintent. I know you might be feeling helpless and powerless as of the moment. Rest assured, that's only temporary. You see, we are very interested in you becoming our ally, Miss Rose, but I know you will never do that. Hence, we have developed a device that will sit nicely on the back of your neck, connected to your spine, and after that you will be doing everything we will ask for. You will be our puppet, a sweet little killing machine, and I will be the one to make that into fruition. She felt tears streaming down her face. She didn't know why, she felt so defeated. Like there wasn't any hope left. Oh, tears. My dear, rest assured, it's not because of you personally. In fact, if you didn't have that tube connected to you that pumps a chemical that makes the brain overload in negative emotions, I bet you'd already have killed me and escaped. Isn't that right? Her eyes darted toward both her wrists, a thick needle buried deep in her veins as a glowing, green liquid kept pumping inside her. All the bad feelings, the hopelessness, the horrors, the nightmares she keeps buried inside her, haunting her every second that ticks by. You see, Miss Rose, this device won't work on a strong-minded individual. It's harder to control people who are courageous and determined in everything they do, so it's better to break them down and mold them back up to the very picture of how you want them to be. He gives her a beady grin. Now, you know, your uncle never lost hope either. No matter how much of the liquid we pumped in his veins, he couldn't be controlled. No matter, everyone has a breaking point, and Crow Branwen's biggest weakness was the only family he has left. He grabs her by the chin and pulls her closer roughly. Not to worry, once you're broken, he'll break too, and you don't have to concern yourself with your sister either. She'll be joining you and your uncle shortly, and the three of you together will be our most loyal servants. He pulls a circular device from the drawers, placing it on one of the platforms as he typed something in his complicated-looking supercomputer. Ruby's eyes tried to be defiant, but it was no use. She was tired, she was miserable, and she was suspended in midair, arms stretched out in a T-pose as a staggering amount of green liquid pumped in her veins. It was no good. She can't fight it? I'm sorry, Yang. Blake, she thought bitterly before letting her tears fully fall. I'm sorry, Weiss. I wish I could have told you how much I... Completed, the old man laughed. He takes the disc-like object and inspects it carefully with his evil-looking eyes. Okay, here's how we're going to do things. I will be placing this on your neck, and you will be the League's loyal, subservient killer. Everything I say is your law, and every I tell you to do is your purpose. Prepare, Miss Rose, to be reborn anew. As he placed the device on her neck, at first it didn't feel like anything. When it latched down, it was like being bitten by an ant. The pain, however, intensified as she felt something coiling down her spine. Like tentacles gripping the back of her head, slowly inching closer and closer until it reached its destination. She was done for, that much she was sure of. Oh. And about your friends, he followed up as she was on the brink of losing consciousness for the final time. She was screaming so much when a giant, disfigured monster came in holding the familiar figures of Ren and John. This is Tyrion, he smiles pleasantly, gesturing at his human atrocity. That man, or what seemed to be a man, was at least 7 feet tall, with his entire body carved, literally, grafted body parts of different people attached to him. Long hair covering his bloodshot, manic eyes. 7 fleshy, assorted arms attached to his wide back, stretching out like they were robot limbs. Wide torso covered in so many patches of skin from different people, no, different species. Powerful legs the size of trunks, littered with scars and other signs of torture. On his waist was a belt directly sewed on his skin, and different sizes of human feet. He was something that should never have existed. Tyrion hasn't eaten in a while. Weiss, Ruby's eyes flashed in horror. What better treat to give him than fresh meat, isn't that right? He laughed. He laughed as Ruby tried to struggle. He laughed as Tyrion the abomination dragged her friends and comrades away. He laughed as Ruby couldn't even cry out loud and scream, and he laughed as she finally succumbed to the effects chemical, and the device fitted perfectly on the back of her neck. Merlot grinned sadistically as he lowers down the youngest rose. He was done with one, now, onwards to the other. I love my job, he cackled as the youngest rose followed his every order. Weiss and Blake sighed simultaneously as they continued walking around the place. There was at least one thing they both knew though, they were probably, most likely lost. Odder still, was the complete emptiness of the halls all around them. There were no people, no crazy, corrupted synchronized Nazis, no signs of life wherever they were. This place is giving me the heebie-jeebies, Blake mutters, and at the sentiment, that much they agreed with. Seriously, the hell is going on? Their little saving grace came when the map on their visor showed a little room named Surveillance, and she popped out from their vision. As silently and quickly as they could, they made a straight beeline for it and found that there was no one even bothering to apprehend them. Well, she'd just think of it as one big lucky break. After they'd been through, she kinda deserved it. Finding the door unlocked, Blake twisted the knob, but the first thing they saw made her double take, wanting to keel over and puke out everything she's eaten for the past few hours. Considering there was none, she was about to hurl pure stomach acid as a pair of corpses that was probably beginning to rot attacked their senses. Pools of blood around the floor, clean headshots straight into their heads. What the fuck? Blake says shakily, grabbing Weiss' wrist, but before they could turn around and make a break for it, the door behind them shut tight and locked. Don't move, a gruff voice said from behind them. Do anything we don't like, you'll be joining your friends on the floor. Wait, you don't understand, she began to say, but tears threatened to fall down her face as she felt the muzzle of a pistol digging on her back. Wait, Agent, they're speaking, a woman says from behind them, and she releases a shaky sigh of relief as the muzzle retreated along with the person holding it. Her knees still felt weak, but this pair might misinterpret it if she made any sudden movements, so she pulled through, forcing herself to stay upright. You two, keep your hands up, remove the helmets and turn towards us very slowly. From her peripherals, she sees Blake shaking, but they both did the same thing, keeping their arms up as they removed the helmets and slowly turning around. As soon as the two pairs saw each other face to face, Weiss and Blake couldn't hold back their gasps. Holy shit! How the fuck did you two get here? The gruff man asked in disbelief, immediately lowering the gun. Of all the people they intended to run into, Crow Branwen, Ruby and Yang's guardian and uncle was the last person they ever expected to come. But they were unaware of the horror that lay just beyond. Alright, that's where we'll leave off for the day. Thanks so much for listening along with me today. If you enjoyed, please like and comment down below. It really helps with the algorithms. I look forward to seeing you next time. Ciao for now, lovelies.